Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Specialty Crops podcast here as we go. We're going to be talking about some pumpkin diseases with Brad Bergefurd, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there. Today, we're going to be talking about some pumpkin diseases as we coming up on that season as the nice weather progresses and such. Brad Bergefurd's got a lot of cool information about all these great, I should say, not great, pumpkin diseases.
Yeah, hopefully you can see everything there, Duane. And yeah, appreciate being back. I took a little vacation time and spent some time with the grandkids at the county fair and had a couple grand champion poultry projects and duck projects out of the family and had some good times there. So getting back to work and, there's been a lot of things popping up out in these fields, Duane. I've been out on several farms and pumpkins are a big crop in Ohio. They're probably our top three, always in our top 3 or 4 in terms of acreage and value of specialty crops grown in Ohio. And there's a lot of acres. Ohio is a big pumpkin production state. Fall decorating season ranks 2nd in the nation, only other to Christmas in terms of decorating. And how do people decorate for the fall? It's all of our products that us farmers raise: pumpkins, corn shocks, Indian corn, straw bales, gourds, and so forth. So that's why we have such a large pumpkin industry in the state. Let's see, my slides are not, there they go. So as y'all know, we do a lot of specialty crops work down at Piketon at our South Centers. We have a large research farm, and one of our main crops we have done over the last 20, 25 years has been pumpkins. This is just one of our shots of our research plots, and we've come a long way over the last 25 years in terms of pumpkin production in Ohio. Back 25, 35 years ago, you had to do a lot of sprays. Our yields weren't very good. Our pumpkins weren't the nice large sizes that we have today, and not contributing all of it to our research, but our research has definitely helped progress the industry in Ohio. Today we can grow those pumpkin crops on most years with about half or less of the number of sprays we were putting on the crops back in the 80s and the early 90s. Which helps the bottom dollar for growers. They don't have to spend as much money on chemical, plus they're able to save some tractor management time, and plus it keeps those production costs down because seed costs are actually going up, but at least we can offset that some compared to the 80s and 90s with the savings in chemicals. Plus, if we don't have to spray a lot of chemicals out into the environment, that's all the better for Mother Nature as well as the environment. However, getting back to work here the past week, Mother Nature's throwing us for a loop. These hot temperatures we're experiencing, in the mid to high 90s, and then some of the heavy downpours some pumpkin crops and farms have received with these thunderstorms that have rolled through. You put moisture, heat, and that's the perfect combination for disease outbreaks. And the pumpkin crop is actually looking really good until this past week. And then with Mother Nature throwing us for all those loops, I wanted to get the word out to our farmers and those listeners to be on the lookout for some of the diseases that could take a great looking pumpkin crop right now and be a money loser, and we could lose it right now after all this hard work we put in. So thanks to Tom Harker and Wayne Lewis and all of our other summer students and research crew. Like I said, the data that we have received from our research trials has definitely saved and helped farmers with some of the management decisions we're going to share today on some of our top 3 diseases. Now, these aren't all the diseases, but these are the top 3 that I'd like to have folks be on the lookout for. And as the weeks progress, we get closer and closer to that big fall decorating season and the pumpkin harvest, Duane. I think we may touch base on some other ones if we have other insect and disease pests popping up. But over the years, we've come up with some cool different varieties. We are one of the university locations for test sites for new releases from seed companies. So when a new breeder or a new seed company has a new release, something that's they think will fit the pumpkin market, we're one of the universities throughout the nation that do the unbiased research, data collection, and then all the university data is put into one big database, and then that's how the seed company decides whether those varieties should be released to the public or not. So we'll talk about varieties in a later episode, but today I want to get the word out, because if we don't stay on top of these diseases, we're going to have some issues. Oh, we also looked at a lot of specialties. This is different from back in the 80s and the 90s as well. There's white pumpkins, brown pumpkins, orange and blue and green, you name it, pink, all kinds. But we'll talk about that at a later date. One useful resource I'd like to have everybody be aware of is our Midwest Vegetable Variety Trial Report. This has the odor date on it, but the link is still good. Every state used to put out a guide that helps farmers decide what disease control measures that they can take at the different stages of the crop growth. And this is a great guide that outlines all that, because there's so many new fungicides and bacteriocides coming in every year that even me, who works in this field a lot, I refer to this guide because I can't keep all these new chemistries straight in my mind. So that's just the Midwest Vegetable Trial Report. And there's a new one published every year, and it's downloadable free from Purdue University. So you may want to just check out, just type in, if this doesn't take you, you can't remember this web link, just type in Midwest Vegetable Variety Trial Report and the Midwest Vegetable Production Guide. You'll get both of those. The variety report will give you these new varieties we've come in that have disease resistance and tolerance, and the Midwest Vegetable Guide, commercial vegetable guide, will actually give you the chemicals, both organic and non-organic, that are your options for these diseases. There's the Midwest Vegetable Production Guide link as well. And then there's a lot of other good ID guides out there. These from Seminus, which is a seed producer for the cucurbit and the pumpkin industry. You can download these disease identification guides, because that's the key to managing these diseases, is being able to at least get you close when you're out in your fields and being able to identify what are those yellow lesions, or what are those powdery looking lesions, or what are those black lesions. And then we also have a lab at Ohio State, and I'll share that link with you here very soon, of where you can send leaf samples up to Worcester to Dr. Sally Miller. She's our vegetable pathologist, and she has a vegetable disease lab. And so if you're unsure, you can look at these guides. It might get you close, but if you're unsure, you can always send a sample. I recommend not sending them to her on Friday, because they'll lay over in the mail somewhere. But if you can get them next day in the mail, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, her outstanding staff up there will be able to do a culture of those lab specimens. That's what people don't understand. When we're trying to identify a disease in plants, it's the same as people. When we think we've got a disease, they send cultures to a lab to give us a positive diagnosis. Same thing with our plants. We want a positive diagnosis on these disease pathogens, because here's the top three you see in this slide: bacterial wilt, powdery mildew, downy mildew. Guess what? Different control measures for each of those. So if we don't get a good identification, because these could all look similar at different stages of the growth of that pathogen, and if we are treating for downy and it's actually powdery, we've wasted our money with the control measures that we're going to do, and probably lose the crop anyway. So it's always good to confirm your in-field diagnosis with a lab culturing and lab diagnosis, and that's free. That's through Sally Miller's lab, thanks to our Ohio vegetable industry. They provide support to her lab to let her run those cultures for free for us vegetable farmers and vegetable growers. So utilize that, and I'll share the link here with you. But the three we're going to talk about today are bacterial wilt, powdery mildew, and downy mildew. Those are the ones that have reared their ugly head here in the last 10 days, 2 weeks since I've been on vacation. And you have to be on top of these diseases in order to keep a good, profitable crop going. Here's Dr. Miller's contact information, so you can actually send your form, download the forms, the sample forms from her website, and then you could go ahead and submit those samples. And if you go to our website, it'll tell you the proper way to mail those. You know, we want them to arrive the next day, so we encourage next day mailing them. And we also want to make sure they arrive, because they're going to be in that hot mail. So we want those specimens to arrive at her lab in tip-top shape so she can get us a good diagnosis. So again, you can take a look at these addresses later, but here's where you can send your samples if you're not sure what that disease may be. So the first one is the most common, and actually this is called bacterial wilt. And we're seeing a lot of this happening in our fields, in our pumpkin fields right now. Not much we can do now, though. This disease was actually transmitted 30, 40 days ago by those two critters off on the right, the spotted or the striped cucumber beetle. Very easy to identify, yellow bodies. Striped cucumber beetle has black stripes, spotted cucumber beetle has black spots. They feed on the juvenile seedlings back 30, 40, 50 days ago when these were planted to the field, and they just chew on them. And by them chewing on those plants, here's a couple pictures. You can see the holes in those leaves and the holes in the cotyledons. And when you see some damage like that, you know there's a pretty good chance that these cucumber beetles have spread the bacterium. This is a bacterial disease. Big difference. We're going to talk about bacterial, fungal, and I'll also mention viral diseases, but this is a bacterial disease. And as you can see, when the cucumber beetles feed on these leaves, they also can feed on the fruit and the flowers. So just because they're spreading bacterial wilt 30, 40 days ago, we need to be on the lookout for cucumber beetles as we're getting close to harvest, because the cucumber beetles will feed on the stem. So that bottom picture, the stem is all ate up. That's from the cucumber beetle. And then that rind damage, the damage to the skin of the pumpkin, that is caused by the cucumber beetle. And if you have those issues, your load will get rejected if you take it to a Myers or a Kroger's or a Rural King. And plus, if you're selling them at the home market or a farmer's market, they're not going to look very good. The customers aren't going to want a jack-o'-lantern that has chew marks all over it. So you need to be on top of the cucumber beetles year-round, from the day you plant until the day you harvest. But how does that darn cucumber beetle spread that disease into the plant? Well, actually, the cucumber beetle does the feeding, causes all that damage, and then it spreads the bacterium through its feces. So when its feces gets into those chewing wounds of the leaf, the feces is what has the bacteria in it, and then that bacteria gets into those feeding wounds, and then just like all bacteria, just like when we get a bacterial wound, the bacteria continues to grow, and if it doesn't have treatment, it continues to grow, and eventually that bacteria plugs up the vascular system of the plant, and that's why we don't see the wilt symptoms for 30 or 40 days later, because it just takes that long for that bacterium to plug up that vascular system. When your sugars in your water doesn't move, you get signs like this pumpkin plant here starting to wilt during the day, and eventually it'll wilt altogether. So these are, again, are the vectors, the striped and the spotted cucumber beetle. Other ones that may look familiar, but these do not spread the bacterial wilt. The western corn rootworm, the pale striped beetle, and the northern corn rootworm beetle. Those may find them in the pumpkin patch, but they're not going to spread the bacterial wilt. The other disease that was really, really bad back in the 80s, we thought this was the big one, powdery mildew. It is a bad disease. It comes in around this time of the year, second, third, fourth week of July into early August. And this powdery mildew, these spores just blow in on the wind fronts and the storm fronts that are coming out of the south. And then they land on the leaves. And then we get these dewy mornings with this heat and these cooler mornings and hot days. That is prime for powdery mildew. So what it really does, it doesn't outright kill the plant, but you see that white powdery stuff. That's the fungal growth on the leaves. And it gets so thick on the leaves that it reduces the photosynthetic activity. Chlorophyll, it wouldn't, the photosynthetic activity won't take place because the chlorophyll is being blocked by that white white substance, fungal pathogen growing on there. So we need to apply a powdery mildew fungicide and keep this at bay as we start seeing the lesions. So be on the lookout for these, because not only will these kill the plant outright because it blocks off photosynthesis from occurring, but it can mess up your handles, and you see the white growth on this pumpkin stem. And if you have that, it just collapses the stem. And if you can't have a pumpkin with a nice stem, you're not going to sell that. It'll be rejected as well. The third one we're going to cover today is a new pathogen that came in within the last 10 years, and actually down in our neck of the woods in Scioto County. I was the first to diagnose this in Ohio on pumpkins 7 years ago, I do believe, at one of our pumpkin farms. What a great thing to be known as, huh? You're the first county to find downy mildew. But this is downy mildew, very important this time of the year. It has surfaced, and it will go through this field like you see here in a matter of days. Within a week, it's gone. Powdery mildew is a slow death. Downy mildew is a quick death. So you really need to be out scouting your fields. And I've had a lot of farmers call and send me pictures. What's going on with my pumpkins, Brad? I was on some farms this weekend, and they do have downy mildew. So be on the lookout for downy mildew coming into our pumpkin patches right now. And again, this will wipe out your planting within a matter of days. The infection rate's so quick. And with our heat and our humidity and these dewy mornings and the heavy fogs and the rains, this disease will just take off like crazy. Totally different mildew than powdery. We don't have the white substance growing on the leaves, but we do get a black downy fungal pathogen growing. And you can see on the leaves here on the right, that's what you'll see in the morning. That black bluish color, those are the downy pathogens. And that's what you want to be on the look for. And you got to look on the underside of the leaf. You got to be out in the field and turn the leaves up and be looking there. And then as the disease progresses, you'll see these downy lesions occur on the top of the leaves. And it just looks like somebody took a blowtorch to the field. It will literally just torch all those leaves off. And this one does outright kill the plant because you totally lose all your leaves. There's an early symptom. So this is what we'd be looking out for now. These are the early symptoms in the early patches, and you'll see these little downy spores on the underside, these yellow dots on top, and then as the disease progresses, you'll get a marginal necrosis, or the edges of the leaves start to brown and die, and then the leaves turn even more yellow. All prime indicators of downy mildew, and you have to get on a downy mildew fungicide, or not a fungicide, a downy mildew side, in order to control this disease very fast. So these are just side-by-side differences. I've said a lot of this already between downy and powdery. A lot of people just say to hear the mildew, they think they're both the same. Totally different control measures. Powdery likes it dry, downy likes it wet. Downy will blight the field fast. Powdery is a slow death. Downy gets on the lower leaf surfaces, powdery gets on the top and the lower leaf surfaces. If you use a hand lens, the downy lesion is more angular, as you can see in that top picture, where the powdery is more of a circular lesion. And then just the two different colors is the big difference between the two, downy and powdery. Just some data. I'm not going to go over this, but there are, when you're looking at powdery mildew now, some of the research we've done at Piketon, we've tested a bunch of different varieties, and you can see the severity. The higher the bar graph, the more severe the powdery is. So the best way for control of powdery is just by variety selection. Choose these varieties that maybe have a lower bar, because then you can cut your sprays. Now for downy, we don't have it yet. The seed producers and the breeders are working on some more downy mildew tolerant pumpkins, but at this point we really don't have it. And if you grow cucumbers, cantaloupe, watermelon, same thing. These same diseases are very bad. And we don't have a lot for downy, but we do have varieties that are tolerant of powdery. It just shows using the inoculum we collected on powdery from our fields at Piketon. Put them in a greenhouse setting, inoculated the plants. you can see 7 days after inoculating them, how we're starting to get powdery mildew. And then with 14 days, they're dead. Now, again, these aren't field conditions. These are just prime greenhouse conditions to make this disease run rapid. But this just goes to show what powdery mildew can do. And downy mildew can go twice that fast. A good spray program, here you can see, these are just some examples of if you do spray the leaves with a certain fungicide, how it's going to control the powdery. So those that are more green, less powdery. Those that are more white, more powdery. So for that, I think that's about going to cover it, Duane, unless you have any questions. But all of our research results from all of our pumpkin work, going back the last 25 years or so, is all available on our website. And again, make sure you visit Dr. Sally Miller. She has done so much work on controlling these 3 pathogens here in Ohio in pumpkin crops, and has done a darn good job of it. So she is the disease specialist. I am not a pathologist. I'm just a horticulture guy, but I know enough that if I do have problems, I go seek Dr. Sally Miller's help. So is there any questions?
Yeah, Brad. So I've got a couple. We've got a few minutes to go here. So I'm going to go back to the first one, that bacteria. Now, you said you get it ahead of time before you actually see it from those 2 critters.
Yeah, the cucumber beetles. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So how should we be on the lookout ahead of time for that? Are we scouting for those beetles itself?
Yes, very good question. And today, when you buy your commercial pumpkin seed, a lot of it is already pre-treated with an insecticide that will knock out those cucumber beetles early. So that's your timing. You know, if you go back, we start planting these June 1. This is the August 1. So we're looking at these been in the ground 50 days or so. That insecticide will give you about a 20, 30-day protection. But yes, you definitely want to be out scouting the fields as soon as you get emergence of that pumpkin crop. And if you see cucumber beetles, there's a, at the top picture here, you see that's just a young plant just emerged. And the kid beetles were feeding on those cotyledons and those newly emerged leaves. And if you see that, you definitely want to control it with an insecticide. And depending on, we have threshold levels, and it's all laid out in the Midwest Vegetable Production Guide. So, if you only see 1 out of a 1-acre field, you probably don't need to spray. But if you see 2 or 3 per plant, you probably need to come up with some type of spray program just to stay ahead of it, for they don't spread that bacterial wilt, and we're not seeing that issue now.
Right, definitely, definitely. Like you said, if you see a couple of them on a plant, you better be getting some kind of spray routine going, or you need to be talking to you about how to get one going.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to our VegNet blog, or Ohio VegNet, that comes out every Sunday night, and we give reports of what's going on throughout Ohio. So if you see one area is already getting cucumber beetle emergence, then you guess it's probably going to be coming your way. The best control is crop rotation, because if you plant cucurbits in the same field year after year after year, you're just going to get the overwintering adults are going to emerge in the spring and attack those little cotyledons and those little plants. So you definitely want to try to rotate out of cucurbits out of the same field.
Good. And then on to the powdery and downy mildew. How quickly do you see that? Does it come on like rapidly? It usually comes on at a later stage of the plant, not right out of emergence like the bacteria does, right?
Yes, correct. These are these diseases, these pathogens are blown in from the south, and downy mildew though is a little different. That actually, the first disease we found of downy, and we see it every year, is in northern Ohio. Now, why would northern Ohio get it when we usually think we get the storm fronts out of the south that bring the disease up from the south? Well, it's been sort of found that the Canadian greenhouses have downy mildew tolerant varieties in their greenhouses. And when they open up the greenhouses in the spring, that Downy pathogen, even though it's not killing the crop because they have disease resistance bred into them, it's still in there. So when they vent the greenhouses, the Downy pathogens, we think, contribute to the inoculum that's in the air. It blows across the Lake Erie, lands on our northern counties. It's the only disease that the northern counties will get first, and we don't get. Usually we get them all down south here, but that's the only one we don't. We'll get it a few weeks later once it comes in from the south. But both of these pathogens do have to blow in on wind currents for the most part. Now, if you got greenhouses and stuff, they can overwinter in there. But for the most part, when the plants die in the winter, the pathogen also dies, and it has to be reunited and come back into the region. Yep.
And then what if you do get this disease, Brad, the powdery and stuff, and you really can't control it, or you didn't get a hold of it in time? Is there what should you do to your crop? Should you just plow it under? Should you do something with it so it doesn't try to stay there in the ground, or affect anything else that you may have plants that may be able to get it close to you?
Very good question, and that leads us into probably a future program, because if you are putting on your scouting, you're finding the lesions, you're identifying them, and you're getting in on a timely spray program, and you're still not getting control, something might be messed up with your spray water, with your sprayer. You may not be putting down enough gallons to the acre. There's other things that can contribute to that non-control if you're doing the chemical applications and you're getting your timing on properly. So with that, we want to make sure our spray water is not too alkaline. We want it as close to 6.0 pH as possible, because anything above 6, you start getting an alkaline hydrolysis, which means the chemical is deactivated. The higher the pH goes, the quicker the chemical can be deactivated. So a lot of the issues I found out when farmers aren't getting control is that's the one. They're getting alkaline hydrolysis. So that's for another program and another show, but we can definitely look at, contact your county extension agent, contact me, talk it through. If you're not getting the control, keep trying, try as fast as you can. And if you totally lose the crop, definitely you want to plow and disc that crop under. Say that Downy came in and fired it off and you're not going to harvest the pumpkin, disc it under, plow it on, bury those pathogens. That's the best way to kill those disease pathogens so they don't blow to other crops or other neighbors. Yep.
Brad did a lot of great information. Again, we're out of time. Please remember to visit all of Brad's information at southcenters.osu.edu. And until next week, we'll see everyone later.